If you want a more effective interview, maybe you need Grimace. Let's check out tip number 94. Hey, welcome back. I'm Stan Walters, your host. 101 tips for interviewing and interrogation, interviewing tips. This is number 94. If you want to do a more effective interview, maybe you need Grimace. Now, let's do a little clarification here. I'm not talking about the Hamburglers, buddy, and the McDonald's commercials. Totally different. No, Grimace is another interviewing approach, very effective, and it falls again into the narrative-based interviewing. Been extensive research. A guy that I follow is Dr. Ray Bull, University of Lancaster, a doctorate in forensic psychology. He spent decades looking at interview and interrogation tactics and methods and techniques, what's working, not working. Participated in the panel that was responsible for creating PACE in the Police and Criminal Evidence Act. So he's got a deep background, deep research in this particular field, expertise, and he's focused on the interviewing process. One of the things that he looked at was the strategic use of evidence. Go back, look at one of our previous tapes on Do You Know SUE, S-U-E, strategic use of evidence. What he was talking about was when do you put evidence forth in the interview? And they found that multiple studies through some of his graduate students, police officers and all that were doing PhD work, were looking at when interviewers were successful and found that those that had evidence previously held it or used kind of a drip, 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 drip feed through the interview were far more successful in two areas. Number one, they created a lot of cognitive load in the subject. They were able to enable them to identify lies a lot better, and they were more successful in getting cooperation from the suspect. Now, it's a little bit different than the PEACE model we just talked about. PEACE model applies to not only suspects, but victims and witnesses. The Grimace model, G.R.I.M.A.C.E, is the interrogation side. Okay? Now, GRI, gather relevant information. Again, I'll put this over here on the panel, one of these sides over here. It'll be on this one. Then we'll cover and explain each part to you. Gather relevant information. Critical prior to the interview to collate the information you have from forensics, victims, witnesses, other sources, so you get some type of picture of the events that happened. Not to assume the subject's going to be deceptive. That's not it. What are all the pieces that you can corroborate prior to that? So you gather relevant information before you do the interview. Once you get in the interview and you have prepared, you get to the point where you manage an accounting. Okay, you motivate the subject to give an accounting what happened. This is where your narrative interview comes in again. Orientation, narration. Okay, when you get the subject narrate using a lot of open-ended questions, looking at timeline, looking at sight, sound, taste, touch, smell, those elements to collate the information from the subject. And you effectively challenge effectively where there's misinformation, where there's conflicts based on a forensics or other statements. So let the subject go all the way through, and then you drip, drip, drip information. You pick one point, you challenge it based on the forensics that you have, okay, strategic use of evidence, and say, wait a minute, you said this, but the evidence, victims, witnesses say that. Again, it's the persuasion not to confess, but the persuasion to tell the truth, the persuasion to tell information, to give details. That's what you're after. That's your end game. Confession is just the bonus. But you want the information that you can show later the subject is credible or not credible. The suspect is credible or not credible in their statements. Gather relevant information. Motivate an accounting, why it's in their best interest, why they should, why it would help them. Get the commitment that to do the best, to be honest with you, you be honest with them. Then challenge effectively with a slow drip of evidence where the subject is wrong, where the subject statements don't match the forensics, and you get corroboration as to why and correct that statement.